Hey, 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 welcome back to the House Husband Diaries. As always, I am your host, Carter C. And what I thought I would do for this little series is make a case for the greatest tennis player of all time. So I will make the case for, in this video, Rafael Nadal is the greatest tennis player of all time. And then in other videos, I will make the case for Roger Federer to be as the greatest or the GOAT, the greatest tennis player of all time. And then I'll make a case for Novak Djokovic. And I think they all have cases, some stronger than others. But at the end, I'll make another video. I'll compare them all and kind of tie it all together. And then we'll talk about some of the best of the rest of history of historical tennis players. And then we'll talk about the future of tennis, which looks bright. So without further ado, why Rafael Nadal is the greatest tennis player of all time. Number one, he has the highest winning percentage of any tennis player ever, period. Not just on clay, in all of his matches, total. He has the fourth most wins all time. I think that's correct. I'm going to have to do a little research while I'm talking. Should have written that down. But yeah, so he has, yes, the fourth most wins all time and the highest winning percentage. So you can't beat that, right? He wins more, a higher percentage of his matches than anyone in the history of the game of tennis. Now, the second reason why Rafael Nadal is the greatest tennis player of all time is his dominance on clay. He's the undisputed king of clay. That's not even a question anymore. He's like the Tiger Woods, if you will. It's not really disputable that Tiger Woods is the best golfer that's ever lived. I mean, Jack Nicklaus has more majors, but Tiger's the best. I mean, period. Like, you might could say, well, he's got more majors, but I think anybody would take Tiger's career. Maybe not, the infidelity and all that stuff. But there's no question that Rafael Nadal is the king of clay, and he has dominated the French Open. A lot of people will say that he only dominates on clay, so he's not the best all-around tennis player. But he has 5 majors on hard courts. And yeah, they play multiple majors on hard courts, but it's not like he's just a clay specialist and he can't win on other surfaces, right? Pete Sampras, who used to hold the record for the most majors before Federer broke it, and now Rafa and Djokovic have surpassed Sampras as well. Sampras never won a French Open. He truly couldn't win on all surfaces, but Nadal has 5 majors on hard courts and 2 on grass. So I don't think you can lay the claim that he's just a clay court guy and he can't win on other surfaces. The third reason that I put Rafa as the number one tennis player of all time is his dominance of Roger Federer. Most of the time, people will say Roger Federer is the greatest of all time, and that'll be in another video. I'll make the case for him. But Roger Federer is being dominated in his historical matchups with Rafael Nadal. Nadal leads 24-16. He wins 60% of the matches with arguably the other greatest player of all time. That's impressive. It's not even close. I went back and looked at all 40 matches that Roger Federer and Nadal have played. And Nadal is 5 years younger and started out beating Federer in his prime the first match and then lost, and they were tied 1-1, and then Nadal ran off like the next 4 or 5. Nadal has always been ahead of Roger Federer in their head-to-head. It's not like, and I'll get into it in Novak Djokovic video and maybe some in Federer's, but I'll go ahead and mention that, Djokovic leads Federer, but Djokovic has won like 5 of the last 6 or something against Federer since 2015. or including 2015. And so he's really done most of his damage to Federer in their head-to-head matchup as Federer's age, like post 35. And Nadal has done it his entire career against Federer. So that's highly impressive, much more impressive than Djokovic, Djokovic's head-to-head with Federer. And then the fourth reason why Rafael Nadal is the greatest tennis player of all time is he has a gold medal in both singles and doubles. Now, tennis wasn't always in the Olympics, so you can't say, that older players can't hold it against older players that they don't have a medal. But neither Roger Federer nor Novak Djokovic has a gold medal in singles. And I believe Federer might have a gold in doubles, but I'll have to check that out for his video. But Djokovic doesn't have either. Nadal has both. You can't get any better than gold. You know what I mean? So then the fifth reason why Rafa's the greatest of all time is he is the number one. He spent the most weeks in the top two, ranked in the top two of anyone. He passed Federer, and he's continuing on. He's ranked number one at the year end 2019, and so he's just going to extend that. He's like 10 weeks past Roger Federer in total weeks inside the top two. Now, I'll get to that in the against part of Rafa here in a little bit, because Rafa spent a vast majority of that time as the number two player, either ranked player, either to Federer when he was number one or Djokovic when he was number one. So that's interesting. Sixth reason, I've got one more. Sixth reason is he's the youngest ever to win all four majors and complete the career Grand Slam by like 3 years over Roger Federer. He was 24 when he won the career Grand Slam. Djokovic was 29. So he surpassed that way before those other two guys could. And then the last reason that I'll say Rafa is the greatest before I start making the case, against why he's not, is he's second in total Grand Slams. He's got 19 Grand Slam titles. Roger Federer's got 20. Federer's 38 or 39. And Rafa's almost guaranteed to win his number 20 at the French Open I guess it starts in May, but it'll end in June of 2020. So in like 5-6 months, he's almost guaranteed to win the French Open if he's healthy. But he also has the Australian Open in January, finishing in early February, and he's made the final of the Australian Open 2 of the last 3 years. Now, he's lost most of his finals. He's like 1-5 or 1-4 in finals of the Australian Open. But there's a good chance that he could tie Federer for 20 Grand Slams, most Grand Slams at the Australian Open or at the French, or pass him total. So those are my reasons, 7 reasons why Rafael Nadal is the greatest tennis player of all time. At this point, I have 5 reasons why he's not the greatest player, of arguments when you look at what are the other arguments for Roger Federer, for Novak Djokovic, or someone else. And the first one that I'll say that is hard to argue against is Rafa's total number of weeks at number one, ranked number one player in the world. He's 6th most. He's number 6, so he hasn't been ranked number 1. Now, you can argue that maybe the ranking system is skewed. They don't give enough points for certain things, yada, yada, yada. They don't play enough matches on clay, and so he doesn't get a rack up points because they just play so much on hard courts. But despite all of that, he's number 1 in the world currently. He has a good shot at adding a bunch of weeks to that. But right now, the end of 2019, Rafa's 6th in the world, or 6th all time as world number 1. And that's just really, it's a blemish. It's a pimple on Rafa's case as being the greatest, the GOAT of tennis. Reason number 2 is his head-to-head with Novak Djokovic. He's down by 2. He's 26 and 28, I believe, against Djokovic. And really the difference when you look at that, you break those two down, is they've played an equal number of matches on. Sorry, let me back up. They have an equal record on. They have an equal record on grass. They have the same record, basically flip flopped. So Djokovic has won more on hard courts against Nadal, and Nadal's won more on clay, but they've played 2 more matches on hard courts. So Djokovic has 2 more wins, and you would think if they played 2 more matches on clay, that Rafa could even that up. But still, he is down. It's really close. It's 2 matches, but he is losing head to head to Djokovic. Number 3 reason why Rafa is not the greatest player of all time. He hasn't won the most Grand Slam titles at this point. He's got 19. Federer has 20. Reason number 4, total titles. He's 25 titles from Jimmy Connors. He's 19 titles behind Roger Federer. He's got some years if he wants to keep playing, but you can just throw that out. It's pretty easy just to say, hey, he's not even close in that regard. And he won 4 titles this past year, 5 last year. So, I mean, you're looking at 4 or 5 years of sustained winning to get to Federer and Connors on total titles. And the last reason that I'll say against Rafa, which some people could care, some people will not care, but he's never won the ATP Tour Finals. And I think that says something when either he's injured or he doesn't show up for whatever reason. He's never won the biggest year-end title, which is the fifth biggest event of the year on the tennis calendar. And Federer and Djokovic have like 5 and 6 or 6 and 5 respectively. You would like to see the greatest player of all time be able to go to an event that is just the top 8 players from the year and win it. And he's yet to do that. So those are my 5 reasons, arguments against Rafa being the GOAT. But let's move forward. We've got an exciting 2020 in the ATP Tour in tennis. What does Rafa need to do in 2020 and beyond to solidify his status as the greatest player of all time? And I'll say this: he needs to win at least 2 more Grand Slams, right? He needs to hold the record for the most Grand Slam titles, period. And that's assuming that Roger Federer doesn't turn back the clock and win another Australian or another Wimbledon or another U.S. Open. I highly doubt he's going to win a French. You've got Rafa, you've got Djokovic, you got Thiem. Who knows how Medvedev will play? But there's just some up-and-coming players, young players, and Roger's, nobody beats Father Time. And, he's had a hard time at the French Open when he was playing the best tennis of his career, and he's on the wrong side of that. So, there's still an opportunity for Federer to get to 21. But at this point, I'm going to say he's probably not going to get to 21. So Nadal needs another year like he had this year to get to 21 majors. Maybe he can get past that. But he definitely needs a minimum of 2 more Grand Slam titles. Along with that, he needs to get up to within striking distance of Roger Federer's record of total weeks at number 1. Right now, Nadal is 2 whole years. He's 104 weeks behind Roger Federer at time spent at number 1. He's spent 10 weeks more than Roger Federer ranked in the top 2. So that just tells you how much time he spent. So much more time at number 2 than anyone else, and even in the top 2. But his time at number 1 as the best player for that year, for that 52-week rolling calendar, he really needs to add a year and a half or 2 at number 1, which is going to be really difficult for Nadal. But he really needs to get up into the Pete Sampras 286. Djokovic is at 275. Lendl, Connors are all at 270, 268. They're up there. Nadal needs at least a year and a half. He needs to get up there to that Sampras level, in total weeks at number 1 to really kind of start sealing his argument or his case for the greatest tennis player of all time. And then the third reason I'll say, I've got 5 of these. So the third reason I'll say or something that he needs to do in 2020, next year and beyond, is win the Australian Open title again. He would be the first player ever to win 2 career Grand Slams. He's won to win every major twice. So if he could somehow pull another Australian or 2, another Wimbledon, win 3 career Grand Slams, I mean, that would be like an open and shut case for Nadal. And then he needs to win ATP finals, the Tour finals. Like he really needs to pull it together, make that a priority, and just mark that one off the list for no other reason other than to just have it on his resume. It's just a hole, and it's not like a major one. I mean, he could get it major, but I mean, it's something that would just help the argument or close the argument against him. And then the last one I would say even his head-to-head record with Djokovic. He doesn't have to have a winning record. He really technically doesn't have to have a winning record, period. But it would just be nice not to have to argue. Well, he what's the difference of 2 wins, right? Who knows? I haven't gone through every single one of those 54 matches to see who was coming off injury, who was sick, whatever. Because that doesn't really matter in history. You just look at the outcome. So what I would say is Rafa has a really good argument as the greatest tennis player of all time at this point in his career. Another thing going for him is that he is 5 years younger than Roger Federer. So most of these records, Roger's not adding on to, or he'll be adding on to some wins, but probably not majors, but that I don't know that counts so much. So Rafa really has a chance in 2020, 2021, depending on how long he wants to play, how long he has that drive to really push the records, get past Roger, and then set the new standard for Djokovic, who's a year younger than Rafa. And I'm sure Djokovic is going to keep trying to catch Rafa. So there you have it. That's my video, all my research, because I dork out on sports and stats. That's my 7 reasons why Rafa is the greatest player of all time, 5 reasons why he's not, and 5 things that he can do to seal up and wrap up his case as the greatest player of all time. Thanks so much for watching. Next video, who knows, whatever you want to watch on the channel. Talk to you soon.